today, we're going to have a fantastic intergenerational conversation with the Men of NBCDI. Gentlemen, can you introduce yourselves?
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Wendell Campbell and a member of the Council of Elders of NBCDI. I am also the founding member of the Men of NBCDI, along with my esteemed brother Barry Walston.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Brother Naseem. It's good to see you. And of course, Dr. Campbell. Barry Walston, I am the past president of Albany, New York affiliate, NBCDI. Albany BCDI has been a member for 28 years, and so excited to continue this work. And of course, Dr. Campbell just mentioned the fact that we have the Men of NBCDI, which we are super excited that we've had such good support from leadership at NBCDI. So we're excited about having this conversation. We know how important it is to have men involved in this conversation. So thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you guys both for being here. And if it's okay, I would like to get right into it. So our first question I would love your wisdom and insight on is, over the years, society has undergone significant changes while also experiencing some elements of stagnation and regression. From your point of view, how do you see the similarities in our current political climate, including international conflicts, political leaders and parties, book bans, censorships, and the reversal of landmark rulings like affirmative action and Roe v. Wade, as well as the deaths of unarmed Black people by police? I would love your insight. Let's start off with you, Brother Barry.
Wow, so that's a huge question. I'm going to, the thing I love about BCDI, NBCDI, is that we unapologetically speak through our Black lens. And so I don't want what's happening out in the world controlling the narrative. I am going to focus on two things. One is the book ban. One, it should never happen. Like, the whole notion of a book ban should not be something that the Black community, Black parents, Black institutions should accept. There should not be a ban. It is not a ban. We should be able to go to Dr. Campbell's house and pick up a Black book. They should be able to go to a Black church, pick up a Black book. They should be able to interact with the Greeks, the D9 organizations, and pick up Black books. So I think nationally, when we allow that narrative to control what we know needs to happen, which there's no ban. Black parents can walk into school with their Black child with a book in their book bag that reflects who they are. And so we don't want to give control. I don't want to give control to the national narrative. I think we really have to be strategic and think about this and be intentional about making sure that we control what it is that we want to produce. The other thing, the Black, affirmative action, before I retired with the New York State Department of Health, I was the chair of the Affirmative Action Advisory Committee. And the reality is that, that's shifted to DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. We know that we have to continue to make sure that when we're in whatever settings, that we are advocating and that we are making sure that equity is happening in our own stations, right? So it could be in the school building, it could be in the state office, it could be around policies. We have to make sure that we're there and not get caught up in what I would call this dogma that really doesn't help us move things along, right? So we know that there's affirmative action. We know that it was impacted. But however, the reality is that Black and brown scholars have been impacted by all the structural racist systems. And what we have to do is to continue to be a voice for them. And the unarmed Black people by police. I think we continue to think about how do we keep our scholars safe? How do we keep our families safe? How do we keep our community safe? And it's really not about only the Black police. It's about making sure that we equip our scholars with things that they need to know to survive and to thrive daily. So I get excited about all of this, but Dr. Campbell, you know, you have to just say, okay.
Okay. But Barry, I do want to add to that. We need to be aware of what media, national media, promotes. Because we look at media as answers to some of the questions that we might have. But who is feeding media? The DEI situation. They dismantled DEI in a matter of days once the ruling came down from the Supreme Court. How can that happen so quickly? People fired, departments dismantled. There was more to it. There was an undercurrent. I said was? No, there is an undercurrent. And we as Black people have to understand and keep our antenna up, our eyes open, and our ears tuned to what this undercurrent is. Because if we don't, we will succumb to the media narrative now, which is take America back. Yeah. Back where? Back to what? And we have to be very, very careful and vigilant, and especially when it comes to the education part. As Barry was talking about banning books, what were some of the books that were banned? First banned, The Bluest Eye was one. Right. You see where I'm going with this? Mm-hmm. That's insanity. When we are citizens of cities and counties and states, they all have boards of education. Mm-hmm. Okay? Mm-hmm. We, the Black parents, Black advocates, need to show up at these board meetings. Because some of these board meetings are where a lot of these bannings basically are local. Decisions are made. Okay? Mm-hmm. So we have to show up and voice and support what we know is right. Because sometimes we go to some of these board meetings and we don't see anybody sitting on that 7 or 9 member board that reflects our community. Mm-hmm. When you see that and you see the policies that are developed and come out of those boards, you understand, run for the board, go to your community, get on that board. I served on a board, a school board in my community when I was living in St. Louis, in one of the suburbs. And believe me, we had a Black superintendent. If we didn't have 2 Black board members sitting on that board, my good friend, the superintendent, would have been fired. And he was presenting outstanding policies and procedures and forward thinking. But there were elements on that board that, okay, we have to control our Black people, have to control our own destinies. And we start by controlling our own household, working and being committed to what's going on in the community. Sometimes we have to sacrifice our fun and good times and getting down to the nitty gritty if we are to, as Barry said, thrive in this place that we call America. Under this Constitution that was not written with us in mind, only written for those who wrote it. And you look at the people who wrote this document, wake up.
Naseem.
No, That was fantastic, fantastic points, you guys, and thank you so much for bringing that up. One thing I definitely want to highlight is narrative, how important it was. Barry said talking about using your voice. Elder Campbell mentioned, showing up and really stepping up for our Black children, for our Black babies, for our Black households. And that aligns perfectly with one of NBCDI's 8 narratives. So I definitely see where you guys are coming from and absolutely 100% agree. And would actually love, you guys actually touch base also on some of just the political climates of today and some of the social changes and structures. I would love to ask you guys, how do you deal with the intense social and political turbulence over the years? And especially to somebody like myself, who's kind of getting into the activism game, I would love to know a little bit more information about how to endure.
First of all, Naseem, and to all who are watching, don't again fall into this media narrative that your vote doesn't count. Your vote counts, okay? Because it's not only the national scene that we're talking about your local city and county and community. Mm-hmm. You don't vote, the judge that's elected means something. If that's not the one you wanted, and he's elected, that's the one you have. And when you go before him, you wonder, what happened? Well, you didn't get out and vote. This is a right that our ancestors fought, died, bled for, to give it to you. Utilize that. Don't, again, media narrative, oh, your vote doesn't count. Look who became president. That's fine. But who became your local county sheriff? You have a direct impact on that office. So again, it gets back to this media narrative that feeds negative information and to our people, and we think it doesn't count. It does. Get registered, go out and vote. It means something. Who sits in those chairs determine the laws and policies that will be imposed upon you and me without regard. So we are not helpless in this thing. We are. And we have to be organized and attentive to what's going on in our communities. If we're not, then we will be just like the sheep and following along, or we're standing on the sidelines watching the parade go by.
Yeah. So, Brother Naseem, and I'm sure Sister Allison's going to appreciate my background changes, but I'm doing it intentionally because, as you can see, when you talk about socialization, right, there is a social movement that's happening in back of me. There were committed Black adults who knew what they needed to do to change the political outcomes, the educational outcomes for their scholars, right? So they did it wherever. They did it in the car. There, you'll see in back of me these scholars reading a book. When, your question, how do you deal with intense social and political turbulence over the years? I mean, we have so many examples. We have the whole 1619 project when we were brought here. We have the civil rights. We have, the Black Panthers. We have had so many examples, right, of what turbulence looks like. This is not new for us. And I would say it should not be new to you. If you came up in the era around the Black Lives Matter, we were saying that before. We just didn't say Black Lives Matter, but we knew that the lives matter that look like us, right? And so what I would say is that we need to think about how the turbulence is impacting the mental health of our babies, right? It's not so much about, the social fabric is changing, and that turbulence, that trauma is happening, right? So what are we doing to address that? That's what I want to focus on. Because yes, I can put Dr. Campbell in office, right, on a local level. But again, like he says, we have to be conscious about what the impact is, right? What is the injury? How is the injury impacting our community, our babies? You know, that's something that we have to really grapple with. And as a social worker, I'm seeing, you know, scholars who are just like, there's a void, there's a disconnect, right? And we, in thinking about all that's happening around us, we have to be there for them in a whole different way. So we've dealt with it before. That's my answer. And we can still deal with it, and we will continue to deal with it.
100%. We are resilient people. So I love the point that you made there. It's touching base on the trauma and the communities and the psychological effect, the mental health issues that really kind of come along with this work and with this advocacy. So with that being said, especially with the Black Lives Matter movement that you mentioned a little bit earlier, and media, of course, being able to really broadcast that, and some people spinning that narrative to really kind of just hone in on the negativity there and the detriment to our community. What strategies do you guys have, or have you guys found most effective in coping with fear and anger and despair in our communities as a response to experiencing an anti-Black America? And I guess whoever wants to go first.
Go ahead, Barry.
So I was thinking about the Men of NBCDI. We had a very poignant experience with Brother Naseem, where, you know, we can be in our own space and not be supportive. And those, I don't want to be biblical, but, you know, I use the word revelations, right? There are some, you know, we're doing this work, we think we got it, and we have an experience that's like, oh, wow, that's an aha moment. So even I'm using our space, NBCDI, where there could be fear for Black men and being vulnerable and being open, right? And so one of the things that happened in that experience is that we had to, well, one, there was a spirit that was courageous enough to stand up and say something, right? And so I would say that you have to be courageous, right? You have to be able to trust that within that space, within our community, that there are people who are going to be empathetic, sympathetic, and who will be responsive, right? We talk about cultural responsiveness, right? That was such a poignant experience that we had at a conference with the Men of NBCDI when we look at what how fear can manifest itself and how we can turn that around, right? And I think it's not so much about anger is not a bad thing. I think our scholars who are feeling angry, our adults, our parents who are feeling angry with the system, with teachers, it's not a bad thing. It's not unhealthy. It's the unhealthy part is what you do with it. Like, you can't go in there and create injury for another scholar or for that adult. And part of our challenge is that some of our scholars aren't able to cope with it, right? So how do we give them some tools and strategies? One, we have to talk about it. We have to create these spaces about hearing and listening spaces, hearing them, and also being very, I think for me, I would want Dr. Campbell to treat me whatever his outcomes are for his children, which would be positive and healthy, that exchange would be the same thing. Like, his concern for me not being part of his family, his biological family, he understands that, look, here is a person who's in development who needs support. And so I think we have to change the mindset of the Black adults and how they think about what it is with the relationship with the community, with parents, with our scholars, we have to reframe that relationship. And it is about building and creating bonds and healthy relationships. So,
Thank you for that response. Elder Campbell?
Yes, and there's a couple of words that Barry used. Building the trust is very important. And I'm speaking now about men, Black men, okay? And we having to build the trust among one another to be able to share these things. We Black men have a tendency to hold in certain traumatic incidents in our lives. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want to be seen as weak. How many times have we heard some conversation between Black men and they, oh yeah, man, you weak. That's not what we should be doing. If we have a true friendship, a true bonding, a true connection, we need to be able to share things with one another to help one another, because talking, as Barry said, is one way to get over the anger. Because if we Black men really let our anger out, we would be in full revolution right now, really. But we have learned how to control it. I'm not going to say suppress, because it's not suppressed. It is controlled. And it comes out sometimes, but unfortunately it comes out against one another. And that's not the way that should be. There has to be this feeling of trust. And when Barry and I were initially talking about, and the late Dr. Ernie Smith, in conversation about what direction we wanted the Men of NBCDI to go, as Barry said, we wanted to have a safe space for men to come and discuss things and bond, so that we can build a better network of men involved in NBCDI and their communities in general, and maybe coming away with some different views and ideas. But Barry hit on that mental health part. It's very important. And in order for men, Black men, to overcome some of the mental health issues that we face, and not through self-medication, because sometimes that comes into play with how we deal with it. We need to have these trusting, open spaces. And that's how we view the men of NBCDI. A trusting, open space to let's talk about some things. Intimate things if necessary, understanding, to let what's going on. Oh, that's going on with you too? I didn't know it. I thought I was the only man experiencing this particular trauma. And we have to kind of, again, open up, and as Barry said, the word trust.
Thank you guys so much for that insight. I really, really appreciate that. And also highlighting the Men of NBCDI. It is a fantastic network, a fantastic group of men who are dedicated to just the empowerment of Black men. So please reach out to, if you guys are interested in joining, please reach out to communications@nbcdi.org. We'll be happy to assist you guys with getting you guys in contact. But with that being said, I love that overview and would love to kind of just dive a little bit deeper. Do you guys mind sharing specific insight or actions or attitudes that have helped you guys adapt personally and thrive during this time? And I know Brother Barry kind of touched a base on it when he mentioned stepping into courage. Elder Wendell Campbell, you spoke about it a little bit as well. You talked about just kind of connecting with your community. And also being able to talk about it and really just kind of voice your feelings. But I would love to kind of just dive a little bit deeper from both of you guys. Elder Campbell, do you mind starting?
Oh, no. I think one of the things that I do, I have to do a self-reflection every day. What did I do right? What did I do wrong? What could I have done better? And what should I have done? I saw something and didn't say anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I go back and reflect on, oh my God, I should have said something. Making sure that when I have interaction, I don't let the response dictate my reaction. Because I have to remember, maybe this person, this young man, this man is going through something that I don't know about. So I have to step back and say, okay, wait a minute. I could react a certain, but I'm not going to do that. So that I can draw out from him or her, for that matter. Yeah, okay, brother, let's talk about it. I'm not here to tell you what to do or anything like that, but I may be able to listen and help. Calming this. Maybe that young guy or that older guy, whatever, will say, you know what, and talk about it. Allowing that person to get it out. And I think we as men of scholarship have to be aware of ourselves and how we interact with others, and making sure that every interaction with another person is positive. Even though it may start out negative, we're educated enough to know how to bring that back to a positive conclusion in building again that trust, in order that this person doesn't go away from you even more upset or angry than when you first encountered that person. Don't lash back. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes,
Don't
sir.
lash back. We shouldn't be the ones lashing back, because we have the knowledge base to be able to turn that and control that narrative so that there is a positive outcome in that particular encounter.
Yeah, and it's not easy, Brother Naseem. It is not as easy as Dr. Campbell has laid out, because we're all human, right? And your reaction and your first response is like, hey, to say something. As you can see, again, I've been fortunate to I'm very steeped in my history. So you say, how do you adapt? Like, I love my Blackness. And my heroes and sheroes have helped me to really do the work that I'm doing, right? To really stay the course, to really think about if someone has, again, injured you through words or, physical, mental, that I can always go back and rely and think about what that looks like. So Dr. Campbell talks about self-reflection. So my self-reflection really is these images that you keep seeing. Like, that reminds me, this is your greatness. This is what you're a part of. This is how you should behave. You talk about actions, right? So how do you be a good steward in an educational setting? How do you make sure and ensure that your scholars are safe, body, mind, soul, and head, right? So I always think about that. I walk with that because that was done to me, right? Was it done consistently? No, but there was definitely more of valuing my journey to me to get to where I am today. All those positive things that were poured into me are things that help reflect. And you talked about, my attitude, because I had more good stuff in me than I had more bad stuff. And so what we have to do is make sure that we pour into our scholars, into our families, into our communities, some good things, right? And they're good stuff. When I talk about good stuff, like, I love Malcolm, I love Harriet, like, I love Sojourner. But I love them because I understand what they did, right? I understand the relationship. And so that's what's helped me during these times that, I just know that through our journey, that greatness is going to come out at some point. Come through you, come through Sister Allison, come through NBCDI, that there's going to be greatness. So I'm hopeful.
And one follow up to that, when there is a promotion of something, at least in my life, I encountered a professor. He had to be 90 years old and he was still teaching in history. And my first Black history course, and that book that he had to be 2,000 pages long, huge book. There were only Black people in this history book. It portrayed Black scholars, scientists, you name it. That influenced me because I did not have to believe that my people didn't do anything, because I saw people who had done and who had contributed and who had their work, and I'm going to say stolen. Okay. And here I see this, and that formed in my head, oh, Black people do this? Oh my God. I'm talking when I was a younger man, I hadn't been exposed to that. But when Dr. Dreer exposed me to it, from that day on, I know there is an equivalency, both good and bad, okay? An equivalency and sometimes superiority to what we see in media.
Wow, thank you guys so much for sharing your insight and just your participation in this conversation. I feel so fulfilled, not just mentally, but also spiritually. Thank you guys. And again, we so appreciate having you two professionally and dedicated men who've been a part of NBCDI for so many years, a part of this conversation. It really means so much to get into people like myself, people like the team, and of course, just putting on such a fantastic conversation. Honor you, we appreciate you, and we value your wisdom as we design a new future for Black children. Thank you guys both for being here.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you, NBCDI, for doing this work.
Thank you for the opportunity to present some ideas, some information, and I hope everyone is able to draw something from it.